February 19, 1945, a strip of black volcanic sand in the Pacific becomes one of the deadliest battlefields of the Second World War. Within minutes of landing, Marines are trapped under interlocking machine gun fire, pinned down in a storm of steel, and then a weapon never meant for ground combat begins to roar. Somewhere in the chaos of World War II, an aircraft gun built for the skies of the Pacific war has been dragged ashore. Lighter, faster, and capable of firing up to 1,500 rounds per minute, it turns a narrow beach into a kill zone. In a war defined by epic battles and brutal warfare, this improvised gun rewrites the rules of infantry combat. How did a salvaged airborne weapon end up in the hands of a Marine Corps corporal? And how did one veteran's relentless firepower help secure a foothold on Iwo during one of military history's most ferocious assaults? Before Iwo Jima, before the Black Sand and Mount Suribachi, the idea of the Stinger was born deep in the Pacific jungle, in Guadalcanal between August 1942 and March 1943. Marines fought in thick vegetation where visibility was short and danger came without warning. Patrols moved through mud and tangled roots. Every step forward carried tension. Machine gunners hauled the standard M1919A4, a weapon that weighed 31 pounds. Later versions could reach 35 pounds. Through the jungle heat and uneven ground, that weight pressed heavily on the men carrying it. The gun performed well in prepared defensive positions, but jungle patrols demanded speed and immediate reaction. Engagements often exploded at close range. A few seconds of overwhelming fire could decide who survived the encounter. Above those same jungles, American aircraft carried a different kind of machine gun. The NNM-2 had been developed for aircraft use after World War I. It was lighter than the infantry gun, weighing about 23 pounds. Its power came from its astonishing rate of fire. The NM-2 could fire around 1,350 rounds per minute, and some sources describe it reaching as high as 1,500 rounds per minute. In the skies over the Solomon Islands, that firepower showed its effect. During one clash, American tailgunners fired more than 1,000 rounds from these guns in a short burst, severely wounding Japanese ace Saburo Sakai. The weapon proved capable of releasing an extraordinary volume of fire in mere seconds. By the end of the war, 193,556 M2 machine guns had been produced. Many were mounted on aircraft, like the SBD Dauntless dive bomber. When planes were damaged beyond repair, their guns often remained intact. Marines began bringing some of those aircraft guns ashore. During the landing at Empress Augusta Bay on Bougainville on November 1, 1943, an M2 South were set up in defensive positions. The original aircraft configuration included spade grips and mounts, which made them awkward for ground maneuvering. Private William H. Colby made a simple modification. He attached a bipod to his NM2. On November 25th, when his patrol was ambushed, Colby dropped to the ground and fired what witnesses described as a swarm of .30 bullets, breaking the Japanese assault. The volume of fire overwhelmed the attackers and ended the engagement. The concept had proven itself. Sergeant Mel J. Grevich began refining the idea. With approval from his company and battalion commanders, he converted additional NM2 South for infantry use. He added an M1 Garand buttstock, a bar bipod, a bar rear sight, and a fabricated trigger. He worked continuously as preparations for Iwo Jima. Before the 5th Marine Division sailed, 6 modified guns were completed. 6 aircraft weapons, transformed for ground combat. 6 compact engines of relentless fire. One of them would land in the first wave at Iwo Jima, carried by a Marine who would soon carve his name into history. February 19, 1945, began beneath a sky heavy with smoke over Iwo Jima. Naval bombardment had scarred the island for days. Yet beneath the volcanic rock, the Japanese defensive network remained operational. Landing craft advanced toward Green Beach 1 at the base of Mount Sur. Inside those vessels stood Marines of the 28th Regiment, 5th Marine Division, carrying the weight of preparation and expectation. Intelligence briefings had described reinforced pillboxes, underground tunnels, and overlapping fields of fire. When the ramps lowered, planning gave way to exposure. Machine guns opened from concealed positions almost immediately. Mortar rounds struck the shoreline, throwing black sand high into the air. The volcanic terrain absorbed movement and made digging protective cover difficult. Marines attempting to form organized lines encountered disciplined fire from positions. Engineered to survive naval shelling, Green Beach 1 became a narrow corridor shaped by intersecting arcs of fire. Among the first wave advancing across that unstable ground was Corporal Tony Stein. Assigned to Company A of the 28th Marines, he carried a modified aircraft machine gun assembled prior to the invasion. Only 6 of these weapons had been completed before departure for Iwo Jima. His Medal of Honor citation would later describe it as a personally improvised aircraft-type weapon. Stein moved quickly toward his assigned sector. He became the first man of his unit to be on station after landing, while the remainder of his platoon attempted to organize under sustained fire. He began delivering rapid covering fire across the beach. The aircraft gun at the core of the Stinger was capable of firing around 1,350 rounds per minute. On the shoreline, that specification translated into continuous suppressive output directed at fortified openings controlling the landing zone. Sustained fire disrupted Japanese firing rhythm. Sand and debris obscured visibility within. Brief interruptions in defensive fire allowed Marines to crawl forward and establish shallow positions. Suppression created measurable opportunities for movement across exposed terrain. Stein maneuvered deliberately while maintaining fire discipline. According to a citation, he repeatedly exposed himself to heavy enemy fire in order to draw attention and identify concealed positions. Tracer rounds revealed machine gun locations embedded within reinforced structures. Stein redirected sustained bursts into those openings and advanced toward fortified emplacements. During these actions, he eliminated at least 20 Japanese defenders, supporting the forward movement of rifle squads operating behind his suppressive fire. The Stinger consumed ammunition rapidly during ground operations. Designed originally for aircraft combat, it required frequent resupply under battlefield conditions. Stein exhausted his ammunition and returned across exposed terrain to retrieve additional linked belts. He made multiple trips under direct fire, restoring suppressive capacity at the forward edge of the assault, and maintaining pressure during the most critical phase of the landing. These repeated returns under fire reinforced the tempo of the advance. Suppression remained constant within that sector, enabling squads to reposition, reorganize, and consolidate fragile gains along the unstable volcanic shoreline during the decisive opening hours of the invasion effort itself. There decisively, as the beachhead expanded beyond the initial landing zone, the battle moved into a defensive system built for prolonged resistance. Tunnels connected reinforced chambers beneath volcanic rock. Pillboxes were positioned to cover one another, creating layered engagement zones. Marines advancing inland encountered fire from unexpected angles. As defenders shifted through concealed passageways, the foothold secured during the first hours required constant reinforcement and coordinated suppression to prevent counterattack. Stein remained actively engaged as his unit pressed forward. The modified aircraft gun continued delivering sustained bursts during assaults against fortified positions. Suppressive fire supported rifle squads maneuvering between craters and shattered rock formations. When direct machine gun fire proved insufficient against a heavily defended emplacement, Stein directed supporting fire from a half-track equipped with a 75mm gun. The position was destroyed, allowing continued movement through contested ground. The pace of operations demanded physical endurance. Volcanic terrain, complicated logistics, communication, and casualty evacuation. Ammunition, water, and medical supplies moved forward under threat of indirect fire. The Stinger required continued feeding to maintain its suppressive effectiveness. Each belt represented renewed pressure against defensive strongpoints that had been engineered for resilience. Within that sector, Stein's weapon remained a mobile base of fire, anchoring coordinated advances. Combat on Iwo Jima extended across days of sustained engagement. Units advanced methodically against entrenched resistance supported by concealed artillery and machine guns. The defensive network absorbed bombardment and reopened firing lanes through secondary exits. Marines responded with systematic clearing operations, coordinated demolitions, and combined arms tactics. The struggle required disciplined aggression rather than impulsive assault. Every yard gained represented structured effort under persistent danger. On March 1, 1945, Stein volunteered to lead a group assigned to locate and destroy additional enemy. The mission involved movement through terrain already contested and under observation. While engaging one fortified position with his weapon, he was struck by fire originating from another concealed emplacement. The impact ended his participation in the campaign, at 24 years of age. His actions during the opening phase of the invasion were later recognized formally. 1 year after his death, his widow and family received the Medal of Honor acknowledging his conduct on February 9. The citation specifically referenced the improvised aircraft-type weapon he carried into battle. That modified gun had contributed directly to the establishment and stabilization of the initial beachhead under extreme conditions. Only 6 such weapons had been completed before the division sailed for Iwo Jima. They represented battlefield improvisation shaped by prior Pacific experience and practical necessity. On Green Beach 1, one of those weapons delivered sustained suppressive fire at a critical moment. Within a fortified island engineered to resist invasion, the continuous output of that aircraft gun supported maneuver under fire and reinforced momentum during the most vulnerable stage of the assault. That sustained suppressive force altered tempo within that sector, enabling units to consolidate fragile gains and maintain forward pressure against entrenched resistance during the decisive, early phase of the island campaign. Overall operations there. 6 months after the Marines raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's acceptance of unconditional surrender. The Pacific War moved toward its conclusion, and the urgency that had fueled rapid battlefield adaptation began to fade. Weapons born from necessity, shaped by immediate operational pressure, no longer carried the same priority in a world preparing for peacetime structure. The Stinger had proven its value under the harshest possible conditions. On Green Beach 1, sustained suppressive fire from a modified aircraft gun-supported movement across exposed volcanic terrain during the most vulnerable phase of the assault. In a sector defined by interlocking machine gun fire, that continuous output helped Marines establish and hold a foothold that might otherwise have collapsed under pressure. Despite its battlefield effectiveness, the Stinger never entered mass production. Discussion of broader adoption followed the invasion. Yet the war ended before such emergency innovation could transition into standardized procurement. Only 6 had been completed prior to Iwo Jima, built from salvaged aircraft components and modified by Marines preparing for combat. They existed in a narrow space between improvisation and official authorization. After the war, surplus equipment was frequently discarded or dismantled without detailed documentation. The ultimate fate of the Stingers remains unknown. They may rest beneath the black sands of Iwo Jima or have been broken down in post-war processing yards. The physical weapons disappeared, but their impact did not. Corporal Tony Stein's Medal of Honor citation preserved direct reference to the improvised aircraft-type weapon he carried. Through that official recognition, the story of the Stinger entered the historical record. It became evidence of disciplined adaptation under fire. The Stinger did not reshape doctrine or redefine infantry weapons development. Its production remained limited, and its service brief. Yet during the decisive opening hours of one of the Second World War's most fortified amphibious assaults, a salvaged aircraft gun delivered sustained fire that shifted momentum. In Iwo Jima, innovation met necessity, and in that convergence, Marines gained ground that would not be surrendered.